At the end of the day, I would say that there's not enough support, um, because we're still seeing habitat loss in Borneo. And that really comes down to a lot of corporations and um, lack of protection of habitat. And that's if they don't have a forest, they don't have anywhere to live. And so that's a bit frustrating as a individual or as a lay person, because we feel like we might not have very much power to change something like that. It's like, what can we do? What can we do?
Hi everyone, welcome to Now Boarding, a new travel podcast by me, Payal Nayar. This show aims at creating awareness about ecotourism, sustainable tourism, responsible travel, and a lot more. We will cover stories and journeys of people who are ecotourism specialists and those who are leaders in their field. We will also be talking to people who have had unique travel experiences, remarkable conceptual places to stay, unexplored cultures, and ancient histories of various towns and cities around the world. Join me in this journey of knowing more about travel. Get inspired to see the world and discover your inner self. Hi everyone. Today I'm in conversation with the lovely Jocelyn Stokes. Jocelyn has studied wildlife science. She went on to become a photojournalist and is now a filmmaker. Her documentary, Survival of the Sun Bears, which I was fortunate enough to get a hold of and watch and was completely fascinated by it, is my understanding her first foray into documentary and natural history filmmaking. I could be wrong, and do correct me if I am, but thank you so much for joining me today, Jocelyn.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. This is so much fun. And you're mostly correct, although if we count my first wildlife conservation film that I made in the 7th grade about rainforest conservation, that would be the first that would be the first film that I made. But
okay, so
the
maybe
professional film.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Maybe
Yeah.
I'll just make a slight correction there and add the word professional to it. So
Exactly, yeah.
So anyways, I know that you're in Bali at the moment, and so luckily we are in the same time zone, and
It's
which
so
is great.
convenient.
Yeah, very convenient. So let's start a little bit about your background, Jocelyn.
Yeah. So my background has almost always involved some level of storytelling and creativity. Since I was little, I had my hands on a camera. I was very interested in being able to share a story visually with people. And I I would say post college sort of made the link that what I really wanted to be telling stories about was wildlife conservation. And so I was able to bring those two things together and sort of marry science communication, biology, wildlife biology, and storytelling through filmmaking. And uh, now there's actually some programs, but when I started, that wasn't something that you studied. That was something that I sort of had to craft for myself to create the two. But I have an almost finished graduate degree in wildlife science at Oregon State University, and I have an undergraduate in photography. And I have been working with amazing, incredible wildlife conservation organizations, biologists, and nonprofits and agencies around the world for the last almost 15 years.
Interesting, interesting. So, before we actually get into the film and talk a little bit about the process, I'm very curious to know about how you like the representation of women in wildlife camera work. Is there like a limited pool of women who actually go out to do this? Is it growing now? What, when you started out, you mentioned it's been about 15 years, not necessarily with the filmmaking, but being behind a camera. Where do you see it at now from when it was, several years ago?
I absolutely love this question. This is near and dear to my heart because I think that if you ask any woman in the wildlife filming field, they would feel like they are almost always the only woman in a team full of men. And when I first started filming Survival of the Sun Bears, I only knew of a couple of women doing what I was doing. And I really looked to them as role models. And I'm hoping that by continuing to do this, it will be an evolution of bringing more women into that sector and allowing them to feel like there is a space for women. So I'm hoping that it's growing. I do think that it is growing, but I also feel like there's definitely a deficit of women in this particular field. And when I first started out, I really didn't feel like there was many of us.
Do you think it's fair? Do you think it's different kind of challenges because you're going into rainforests or into remote areas, and if you're if you're kind of not you have apprehensions about about being in like a workforce or a crew of only men. Like how do you think that plays out?
I mean, frankly, it can be very uncomfortable. A lot of the time, I've been in really uncomfortable situations. I've also felt that sometimes, even if I'm on a crew of all men who I adore and I know that they respect me, I still get a sense of being an outsider a lot of the time, which plays out in decision making and the way that everybody relates to each other and the way that we communicate a story to an audience. So I definitely, it's challenging. It's really challenging. And there's a lot of factors to it. There's physical safety, there's cultural safety or cultural miscommunications. Especially I've worked in a lot of areas where it's not necessarily welcome for women to be doing this kind of work. And so it's breaking down some barriers slowly, hopefully. And it's definitely been a challenge. And I think for a lot of women, it would be hard to be out in a remote area, not having a proper shower for months at a time, not, being surrounded by the largest bugs you've ever seen, having to deal with, venomous snakes all around. And, if you're in the jungle, pretty much everything wants to kill you. So that's just the reality of it. But I think, for myself and for a lot of women I know and most people that want to be in this field, the passion for sharing how incredible biodiversity is and be able to tell these stories and to celebrate biodiversity and also to help hopefully protect biodiversity overcomes a lot of those challenges at the end of the day.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah, it's the passion. So, okay, now I think we need to talk about your film.
Okay. Which one?
Which one? No, I think I probably will focus on the sun bears.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, the reason why I dedicated years of my life to making this film was because most people haven't heard about them. They are the least studied bear, they are the least known bear. And after spending about a month with them, the first time I went to go spend time with them, I spent about a month with them. And every day I spent time with these sun bears that had experienced some sort of trauma and had been rescued and were being rehabilitated to hopefully be released back into the wild. And I spent every single day with these bears, and they are absolutely the most intelligent, silliest, funniest, charismatic individuals. Every single one of them different, so much going on, that more than I would say even a dog, has so much personality. And I just recognized that these were such special animals. And then I was simultaneously learning about all the threats that they're facing as a species. And this area in Borneo is one of the last remaining strongholds for them as a wild population.
What are the kind of threats that they are experiencing?
Good question. We should definitely drop in on this. So, triple threat. Unfortunately, they are losing their habitat very quickly. They are also affected by poaching, and a lot of times that is for the Asian medicine trade. A lot of times it's for bile, so their gallbladder, or their paws or their teeth, so parts of the bear. And then on top of that, their babies are so cute. They are the cutest babies. And so people think, oh, what a cute baby. And so they want to have them as a pet. And that's illegal and also frowned upon, because most of the time a bear does not make a good pet. So they end up in these really horrible situations because then people don't know what to do with a bear, because a bear is designed to destroy, and so it will destroy your house very quickly. And they are not cute little cuddly, puppies. They're bears, wild bears. So yeah, habitat loss, poaching, and pet trade.
I picked up something where it was mentioned that sometimes during filmmaking and the process of a documentary film, especially on wildlife, some of the shots are staged in order to piece the story together, because I guess you can't always have because the behavior of an animal is not very different, but more unpredictable as compared to humans. So is that true, and how much of it actually happens?
I think it is true. Yes, it is true. And a lot of the really, really big productions, I feel like they are more opt to take advantage of opportunities to do that. Like big broadcasting, we're talking the big guys.
Yeah.
Because they are spending so much money and they have a very concentrated amount of time. Usually, they will stage things. I mean, I've heard a story about they wanted to get a shot of David Attenborough, and they wanted to have all these butterflies flying around, but it wasn't the right season, so they had to grow the butterflies and then they had to release them. And it was this whole orchestrated thing to get this shot that they wanted, for instance. But a smaller production, for the most part, wouldn't have the resources to do something like that.
I can imagine that.
So in my experience, and most of the people that I work with don't I would say try to avoid any sort of staged wildlife situations, as much as possible. Definitely, we never condone feeding That's definitely not okay. And we don't condone anything where an animal is going to have their behavior significantly altered.
Yeah.
I work as a wildlife guide in Yellowstone National Park, and one of our main rules is we don't do anything that alters an animal's behavior. Even calling an animal to get them to look at you is considered not okay. So there's, varying levels of what is acceptable.
What for Jocelyn are the next projects or are you working on something now? Which part of the world is that going to be in? I'm curious.
I am, and it's very full circle because you started off with wondering about women in the field. And so that's been very near and dear to my heart as a woman in a field where there's not very many women. And so I recently had the opportunity to start to begin to produce my own film. And I decided that I wanted to be completely women led. So my whole team is women. And I've co-partnered with award-winning wildlife filmmaker named Katie Schuler. And we are working on a docu-series about women wildlife conservationists around the world. And I'm actually going to Sumatra next week to start working with a couple of the ladies in Sumatra. And then, oh, it's windy. And then after that, I'll be filming in Nepal and then Costa Rica. And I'm hoping that this is a series that continues on, and it all depends on, the kinds of resources that we can bring in. But because we have so many other amazing women lined up, we've got a woman in Madagascar, we've got a woman in Uganda, we've got all these incredible rock star conservationist women who are protecting critically endangered wildlife, and they are finding really comprehensive, community-oriented solutions for implementing this conservation. For instance, we have a woman who has significantly helped with tripling the tiger population in Nepal. And we have another woman who is leading the first ever sloth census to count the number of sloths in Costa Rica, which has never been done before. And which is very important for, you gotta know how many animals you're working with.
Yeah.
And then we have another woman who has helped to bring the greater bamboo lemur in Madagascar off of the critically endangered species list. It was one of the top 25 most endangered primates in the world, and she's helped to bring that back. And so I'm really excited about this. If you can't tell, that's what I'm working on now. Women in wildlife conservation. Yep.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting how, like you said, it's just circled back to my first question. That's fascinating. How much time do you actually end up or managing to stay at home in a year?
Good question. This year, not very much. I'm on a bit of a stretch right now. I just left Madagascar, and now we're in Indonesia, and then we're doing Nepal and Costa Rica, and then I'll be back in the States for a couple of months, and then probably off again.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. I really, really, that radiant smile that only the viewers can see, and the listeners, I'm kind of hoping the way I've described it, they can visualize, because I can see the passion in that expression. And
I hope so.
I know you're going to do a lot of good work, and I think conservation is so important. And the fact that there are people like yourself who have made it your life's mission to, whether it's through filmmaking or, just talking about it. And I'm so grateful that you were able to have this conversation with me on my platform, because that's the objective of Now Boarding. My podcast show is to talk to people who are change makers when it comes to ecotourism, when it comes to conservation, and if your voice can be heard through my small little platform, I think somewhere I'm hoping that it makes a difference. In this series of conversations with nature and wildlife photographers and conservationists, Now Boarding hopes to be a part of an important ongoing dialogue on the challenges and threats being faced by wild animals and the long-term impact on our ecosystem and biodiversity. Join us by sharing your thoughts, and also your support with a one-time donation will help us to continue bringing you more and more such meaningful conversations. You can find all the information on how to contribute in the show description.